Hello and welcome to lesson 5 of our accessibility training. Today we're going to be going over Microsoft PowerPoint. Now Microsoft PowerPoint is very similar to Microsoft Word and the actual functioning of the system and what we're really looking at to make it more accessible. That being things such as, headings, reading order, alt text, things like that. However, within PowerPoint, you get to places a little bit differently, and also in the system itself, they're called a little bit different names. And so today we're mostly just going to be kind of translating what Microsoft Word to PowerPoint looks like in terms of the actual language that is being used and where we're going to look to find certain things. And what I mean by this is that if we go to View and then the Outline View, this is similar to the navigation pane within Microsoft Word, and we'll see that we have all of our headings, or in this case, it's the title for the actual slides up here at the very top. And so if we don't have a slide, such as here, we don't have a title for slide 1, that's going to be something that will come up in the accessibility checker as being an error, because this is how we're going to navigate throughout the document, is that you can click on certain things and it'll bring you to the actual title of that slide. Also, if we wanted to look at reading order, we can go to the Review tab, and then under Check Accessibility, it will have alt text and then also reading order. So reading order will put it in order of what the screen reader is actually going to go through on each slide. One thing to note is that on Apple computers, on Macs, this will be called the selection pane instead of the reading order. And it also may display it in reverse order to what you're seeing on my screen. But if you are on a Mac, it still may be correct, as in the title would be down here underneath the content, but you'll see that these numbers will actually be backwards. And so it'll be 2 and then 1 on the bottom. I'm not quite sure why it always does that, but it is something just to be aware of if you are a Mac user. And then one main thing to actually talk about when we're looking at PowerPoint is the medium of PowerPoint itself, which is obviously very different than both Word and PDF, as it's something that we're going to be presenting and we're going to be talking aloud to our audience. There's some things to note when we're looking at this. One of the main ones being is that on the home page, we have a ton of different slide layouts. And so this is going to drastically affect how your actual information is being displayed. And so if we just play around with this and change this to a title slide, we'll see it looks very, very different than if it just has a 1 content slide. And then we also have some 2 content slides, which we'll see farther down. And something like this is a 2 content slide because there's a divide between content on the left and the content on the right, in this case, it being a graph. So while choosing the right slide layout, we also want to make sure that the content on each slide is digestible in a pretty quick amount of time. People are going to have difficulties reading the slide and then also listening to what you're saying aloud. And so we want each slide just to have bullet points that kind of hit the key elements. As we can see here on this slide, we just have little words that then we'll describe aloud to our audience so that they read it quickly and then they're focused back on what you're saying. And then you also don't want any slide to really linger for more than a minute, maybe 2 minutes. You don't want people just to be staring at the same visual for the entire time, because that's how they'll lose focus and really stop paying attention to also what you're saying. So that's why we need a quick flow of information on the slide. It's just hitting a couple of bullet points and then you're describing those aloud. But then each slide is also not going to be just completely swamped in information that you're trying to explain verbally, because if that's the case, that's when we want to break it into multiple different slides. Also, when we're looking at visuals, such as here, we have a graph over on the right side. Things such as this is just going to be there to reinforce the information that's actually on the slide, which is a little bit different than what we try and do in Word and PDF. And so here we actually have all of the data typed out on the left-hand side. And also this could be something that we want to say aloud. And then on the right is where we have a graph demonstrating this more visually. We still want to do things such as incorporating alt text Or if we're only presenting it aloud, then we can also mark this as decorative. And so we would do it the same way, either right clicking, or you can go to format up top and go view alt text and then mark it as decorative. But one thing that's very important is whenever there is a visual, you want to explain that visual aloud to the audience for individuals that can't see. So you'll basically be filling in for the alt text that would be there if they were accessing it via screen reader. And so, very quickly, while we were talking about all the enrollment population at Auburn based off of that ethnicity and race, then we'll go to the right side. We'll kind of explain what the graph is showing, that there's just, a predominantly white demographic here at Auburn. And so once you're done going through and checking things like you would in Word document, still checking for typos, contrasts, things like that, under the review tab is where that check accessibility is, which we looked at earlier with the reading order. And so if we click on that, here we'll come up with some actual errors. And one thing to note that I want to show is when we're missing a slide title. So on slide 1 here, we're missing a slide title, but we actually have words that are being displayed. This is just a product of our template here at University Writing. And so if you wanted to add a slide title, it would actually add a text box and then type in whatever you're going to be trying to put in. So in this case, it would just be University Writing. So this is where we want to add a hidden slide title. And so then we would type in University Writing. And what this will do is it'll make it so that in the actual hierarchy over here on the left-hand side, we'll see that there's a University Writing slide title now, but it's not going to display when we're actually presenting the content, on a big screen or via computer or anything like that, which is super beneficial both for our audience to be able to navigate on the left side and then also for us as the creators, because sometimes it can create a little headache if we just have a graphic on a slide. We don't want something to be displayed. This is also another note that if we're ever looking at a graphic like this, so where we see that this is a graphic that we've taken, but there's a lot of words that are actually being displayed here in this diagram, we don't want the alt text to explain every single word that is happening on this slide. So we wouldn't want to go in and type purpose while you're creating this work, because that's just going to be redundant for our users. And then also it's just not going to really be the best and most efficient use of time. So when we have a slide like this, what we want to do in the alt text is either just quickly describe everything that's going on, or just be very aware of describing it aloud when you're actually presenting the content to your audience. So as I said, there's not really a ton of different things that are really going on within PowerPoint versus Word. It's all of the same criteria and all of the same exercises that we've done in the past, just here in a new format, which can be kind of difficult. So as we move on, we're going to go into the activity in which you'll have a short sample PowerPoint that's pretty densely packed with accessibility errors. And you'll just be going through that, searching for anything that you think is wrong or making any changes that you deem necessary, and then checking yourself versus the key as well as the key video in lesson 5.5.